The night had settled like a heavy blanket over the industrial outskirts, where forgotten factories and rusted warehouses crouched like sleeping giants. Eric wiped the grease from his hands, the cloth already blackened from a day's worth of mechanical repairs. His garage, a converted storage unit with peeling paint and a sturdy metal door, had become his sanctuary in a world growing increasingly unstable. It had been 3 years since the first confirmed contact with his Althorians. 3 years of uneasy diplomatic exchanges, thinly veiled threats, and rumors of invasion plans. The central government maintained its grip on major cities, but here in the outskirts, people lived with a constant undercurrent of fear. Eric preferred it this way. The less oversight, the fewer questions about his past. Sometimes, when he couldn't sleep, he still heard the screams from that night in Newcrest when everything went wrong. Better to be a nameless mechanic in a forgotten corner than to face what he'd left behind. The clock on his workbench read 11:48 p.m. He should sleep, but sleep rarely came easily. Instead, he settled for a lukewarm shower to wash away the day's grime. Just as he stepped out and pulled on a threadbare t-shirt, a crash shattered the night's stillness. Metal against metal. A distinctive whirring sound that didn't belong to any Earth-made vehicle he knew. Then silence. Eric's instinct screamed at him to lock the door, turn off the lights, and pretend he heard nothing. But curiosity, or perhaps something deeper, pulled him toward the back alley. Grabbing a heavy wrench and a flashlight, he eased the rear door open. In the narrow strip between buildings, illuminated by his flashlight beam, lay a crumpled form beside what appeared to be a sleek, chrome-plated motorcycle. But no Earth motorcycle had those pulsing blue energy lines or that distinctive engine housing. It was a grab cycle, Zalthorian technology, and its rider was unmistakably not human. She lay half-conscious against the wall, one leg bent at an awkward angle, blue-green skin, with a faint luminescence that seemed to pulse with her labored breathing. Her features were hauntingly beautiful, sharp cheekbones, almond-shaped eyes with vertical pupils, and hair that resembled dark copper wire, falling in intricate braids. Her eyes snapped open as Eric approached, immediately alert despite her obvious pain. In one fluid motion, she pulled a slim, metallic device from her belt and aimed it at his chest. "Stay back," she commanded, her accent unusual but her English perfect. "I can vaporize your heart before you take another step." Eric froze, raising his hands slowly. "Your cycle's overheating," he said calmly, nodding toward the machine where blue energy crackled dangerously around the power core. "And that leg needs attention. I'm a mechanic. I can help with both." Her eyes narrowed, studying him with predatory intensity. The weapon didn't waver. "Why would you help me, human?" Eric shrugged. "Because you're hurt. Because that engine's going to explode if it's not stabilized. Take your pick." For a long moment, she held his gaze, then winced as she shifted her position. The weapon lowered slightly. "The engine first," she said. "Then we discuss my leg." Eric nodded and slowly approached the grab cycle. The technology was alien, but mechanical principles were universal. He identified the overheating regulator and, using his toolkit, managed to bypass the damaged section, redirecting coolant flow. The dangerous crackling gradually subsided. "It'll hold for now," he said, turning back to the woman. "But it needs proper repairs. I can do that inside my garage." She studied him for another long moment before tucking the weapon away. "Very well. Help me up." As Eric approached, he noticed the blood, purplish rather than red, seeping through her form-fitting suit at the shoulder and leg. She was worse off than she'd let on. "I'm Eric," he said, carefully supporting her weight as she stood. She hesitated before answering. "Claret." Then, with a grimace of pain, "And if you betray me, Eric, I'll ensure you regret it." He helped her limp toward the garage door. "Noted. Let's get you inside." Something told Eric his quiet life had just become significantly more complicated. The interior of the garage was a testament to Eric's desire for solitude, sparse, functional, with a small living area partitioned off from the main workspace. He eased Claret onto a worn sofa and retrieved his first aid kit. "That's meant for humans," she observed, eyeing the supplies skeptically. Basic principles should apply, Eric replied. Stop bleeding, clean wound, close wound. Unless your physiology is radically different. Claret's mouth twitched in what might have been amusement. No, we're more similar than your scientists realize. She began unfastening a section of her suit to expose the leg wound. The shoulder can wait. This needs attention first. As she pulled the fabric away, Eric saw the jagged gash that ran from knee to mid-thigh. The wound was deep, revealing tissue structures that were indeed similar to human anatomy, though tinged with unusual colors. Eric worked methodically, cleaning the wound with antiseptic that made Claret hiss through clenched teeth. Her hands gripped the sofa cushions until her knuckles paled to a lighter blue. So, he ventured as he prepared to stitch the wound. Want to tell me why a Zalthorian is crash-landing in my alley in the middle of the night? No, she replied tersely. Fair enough. He began the first stitch. But whoever damaged your cycle might come looking. It would help to know what I'm harboring. Claret watched him work with cautious fascination. You assume I'm the victim. Are you saying you're not? She fell silent, then sighed. I'm being pursued. That's all you need to know for now. Eric nodded, continuing his careful stitching. By other Zalthorians? Yes. Military. A tight nod. Eric tied off the last stitch and began bandaging the leg. That explains the weapon. Not standard issue for tourists, I'm guessing. This time, the twitch of her mouth was definitely a suppressed smile. We don't have tourists. Right. Conquest only, no sightseeing. He finished with the leg and moved to examine her shoulder. This needs to come off, he said, indicating her upper bodysuit. Claret's eyes glittered, eager to see an alien naked human. Eric maintained his professional demeanor, though he couldn't deny a flush of warmth. Eager to keep you from bleeding out on my sofa. With a fluid movement that belied her injuries, Claret unzipped the front of her suit and peeled it back from her shoulder. The wound there was smaller but deeper, a puncture rather than a slash. Projectile weapon? Eric asked, cleaning around the entry point. Energy pulse. Close range. He whistled softly. You're lucky to be alive. Skill, not luck, she countered. I moved at the last second. As Eric worked on the shoulder wound, a high-pitched whine outside made them both freeze. A moment later, a harsh beam of light swept past the garage's small window. Patrol drone, Claret whispered, reaching for her weapon. They're scanning for my biosignature. Eric quickly assessed their options. The garage had a small cellar access, originally for working underneath vehicles, now used mostly for storage. Under the trapdoor, he directed, pointing to a metal square in the floor partially hidden by a workbench. Hurry. He helped Claret to the trapdoor and down the short ladder, then closed it just as a heavy knocking rattled the front door. He kicked a rug over the trapdoor, then moved to answer. 3 Zalthorian soldiers stood in the doorway, their armor more elaborate than Claret's sleek suit. Their leader, distinguished by red markings on his shoulder plates, stepped forward without invitation. Human, he addressed Eric with barely concealed disdain. We track a fugitive to this sector. Have you seen any of our kind tonight? Eric shook his head, maintaining eye contact despite his racing heart. No, I've been working late. Just about to turn in. The leader's vertical pupils contracted to thin slits. You would not lie to a Zalthorian officer, would you? The penalties are severe. I value my skin too much for that, Eric replied honestly. The soldier studied him, then glanced at a device on his wrist. We detected an energy signature consistent with a damaged grab cycle in this vicinity. Eric shrugged. There's a scrapyard 2 blocks east. Lots of strange metal there. Maybe your readings picked that up. The leader considered this, then nodded to his subordinates. Search the scrapyard. Wide-scale bioscan. To Eric, if you see anything suspicious, human, you will report immediately, or we will return for you. Eric nodded. Understood. The soldiers departed, their boots making no sound on the pavement, an unnerving reminder of their alien nature. Eric waited until they were well away before retrieving Claret from the cellar. They'll be back, she said grimly as he helped her back to the sofa. The scrapyard will delay them, but not for long. Then we'd better get your cycle operational. Eric folded his arms. But first, the truth. Why are they hunting you? Claret's expression hardened. You've helped me, Eric. Don't push for more than I can give. Those soldiers didn't look like they'd ask questions before shooting. I deserve to know what risk I'm taking. She studied him, calculation evident in her strange eyes. Finally, she nodded once. I've taken something important, something that could change the balance between our worlds. What kind of something? Information. Her hand went to a small, rectangular device secured at her hip, barely larger than a credit card and glowing with the same blue energy as her cycle. The kind that powerful people kill to protect. Eric rubbed his face. Wearily. Great. Interspecies espionage. Just what I needed. Despite his complaint, he moved to the garage proper and wheeled her damaged grab cycle inside. The machine was a marvel of engineering, more organic than mechanical in its design, with components that seemed to pulse and shift like living tissue. Can you fix it? Claret asked, limping over to join him. I can try. Show me how it works. For the next hour, Claret guided Eric through the basics of Zalthorian engineering. Despite her initial guardedness, she seemed to enjoy explaining the technology, occasionally expressing surprise at how quickly he grasped the concepts. As they worked side by side on the cycle's propulsion system, their hands occasionally brushed. Each time, Eric felt an unusual warmth where their skin connected, not unpleasant, but distinctly alien. Your thermal regulation is inefficient, Claret commented after one such contact. Your temperature spikes with each touch. Eric focused on reconnecting a power line. That's not a thermal regulation issue. Oh, she looked at him curiously. Then understanding dawned, and a smile played at the corners of her mouth. Human attraction responses. Fascinating. Let's focus on the cycle, Eric said, ignoring the warmth now spreading across his face. Claret leaned over the engine housing, reaching for a component just beyond her grasp. She winced as the movement pulled at her stitches. Stop, Eric said. You'll tear your leg open again. Tell me what you need. The regulator coupling. But it's sensitive. You need to. Show me, he said, moving beside her. Claret positioned herself in front of him, guiding his hands with hers. Like this, she said, her voice suddenly closer to his ear than he expected. Gently, it responds to pressure. Her body was pressed against his now, the strange warmth of her penetrating his clothes. As she helped him manipulate the delicate component, she shifted her position. Don't move, she murmured, a playful lilt entering her voice. Let me arch my back first. The deliberate sensuality of the movement sent a jolt through Eric that had nothing to do with the cycle's electrical systems. Claret glanced over her shoulder, her alien eyes glittering with something between amusement and genuine interest. Your thermal regulation is failing catastrophically now, she observed. Eric cleared his throat and focused on the task at hand. The coupling is secure, he said, stepping back slightly. What's next? But a sudden noise outside interrupted them. The distinctive whine of multiple patrol drones, closer than before. They've finished with the scrapyard, Claret said, instantly alert. We need to move. Now. The cycle isn't ready. It will have to be. She began gathering her few belongings. They're using wide-spectrum scanners. The seller won't hide me this time. Eric made a quick decision. I have a friend's place we can use, but we'll need to take my truck. The cycle's too recognizable. Claret nodded grimly. Lead the way. Within minutes, they were in Eric's battered pickup, the grab cycle hastily concealed under a tarp in the truck bed. They pulled out of the alley just as the patrol drones rounded the corner behind them, their search beams sweeping methodically across the buildings. The city's outskirts rolled by, illuminated by the occasional streetlight. Neither spoke for several minutes, the tension palpable in the truck's confined space. Finally, Claret broke the silence. Why are you helping me? The question sounded genuine, puzzled. You know nothing about me. Eric kept his eyes on the road. Maybe I've been looking for a chance to do something right. You're speaking of past regrets. He nodded slightly. Something like that. What happened? Eric's hands tightened on the steering wheel. I was a combat engineer. Military. There was an operation that went wrong. Civilians died because of a mistake I made. I couldn't face it, so I ran. Ended up in that garage. Claret absorbed this in silence. Then, we are not so different then. Before Eric could ask what she meant, headlights flared behind them, moving too fast, too purposefully. They've found us, Claret said, checking the side mirror. Military transport. 3 occupants, heavily armed. Eric accelerated, taking a sharp turn onto a narrower road. How did they track us so quickly? Claret's expression darkened. The data drive. It must have a tracker I missed. She pulled the small device from her belt, examining it closely. There, built into the encryption matrix. Clever. The truck shuddered as they hit a pothole, the pursuing vehicle gaining ground behind them. We need to disable it, Eric said, taking another turn at dangerous speed. If I damage it, we lose everything. Claret looked torn, then decisive. Take the next right. There's a motel there. I saw it on approach. We can create a diversion. Eric followed her direction, pulling into the parking lot of a dilapidated motel, the kind that charged by the hour and asked no questions. The pursuing vehicle slowed, hanging back at the road entrance, waiting. They're being cautious, Claret observed. Good. There's a service entrance at the back. We go in the front, out the back, and circle around to your truck. And the tracker? She held up the data drive. I'll leave it in the room. They'll think we're hiding. By the time they realize we've gone, we'll be far away. And the information? Claret tapped her temple. I've memorized the critical parts. Enough to be dangerous. They hurried into the motel, Eric paying cash for a room while Claret kept her face down, collar turned up. The desk clerk barely looked at them, more interested in his screen than the late-night guests. The room was exactly what Eric expected, dingy, with stained carpets and a bed of questionable cleanliness. Claret immediately went to the window, checking the parking lot. They've sent in 2 soldiers. The third is guarding their vehicle. She turned to Eric. We have minutes at most. Eric checked the bathroom window, small but large enough to climb through. This leads to the back. We can. A subtle vibration cut him off, the building's ancient pipes shuddering as water was turned on in another room. But the pattern was wrong, too rhythmic, too deliberate. They're scanning through the pipes, Claret whispered. Smart. The water carries sound vibrations better than air. Eric's mind raced. We need to mask our biosignatures. An idea struck him. The shower. Steam and hot water will disrupt their scanners. Claret nodded quickly. Do it. Eric turned the shower to its hottest setting, steam quickly filling the small bathroom. Then he returned to find Claret removing her suit's outer layer. What are you doing? He asked, startled. Creating our cover. She stood in a form-fitting undersuit that left little to the imagination, her alien physiology both familiar and exotic in its contours. If they detect 2 life signs in a motel room with elevated temperatures and... She smiled wickedly. Certain movement patterns, what will they assume? Understanding dawned. That we're occupied. Precisely. And unlikely to be their target. She moved to the bed, beckoning him. Gulme. Make those bed springs work for us. Eric approached hesitantly. Claret positioned herself at the edge of the bed, then pulled him down beside her. The ancient mattress creaked obligingly. Now, she whispered, her face inches from his, we wait. And if they check through the door? She shifted her position, arching against him with a theatrical moan that sent blood rushing to his face. Don't move, she breathed, eyes glittering with mischief. Let me arch my back first. The performance was convincing enough that Eric found himself responding despite the danger. Claret seemed to sense this, her playful expression softening into something more genuine. Your species is remarkably responsive, she murmured, no longer just acting. And yours is remarkably. He searched for the word, adaptable. For a moment, the charade faded. There was only her strange warmth against him, her alien eyes studying him with unexpected vulnerability. Then footsteps in the corridor broke the spell. They both tensed as the steps paused outside their door. Claret immediately resumed her performance, louder this time, adding Eric's name for good measure. After an excruciating moment, the footsteps continued past their room. It worked, Eric whispered, relief washing over him. Claret nodded, but didn't move away. Instead, She regarded him with curious intensity. You're not what I expected, Eric. What did you expect? Humans are portrayed as selfish, primitive. Yet you've risked everything for a stranger, an alien who could be your enemy. Before he could respond, the motel room door exploded inward. Standing in the doorway was not a Zelthorian soldier, but a tall, commanding figure in ornate battle armor. His skin was a deeper blue than Claret's, with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed with obvious rage. Not a stranger, the intruder said, his voice like gravel. My betrothed. Claret's face drained of color. Jarek. The Zelthorian commander stepped into the room, flanked by 2 soldiers. His eyes, a metallic gold unlike Claret's green, fixed on Eric with murderous intent. So this is why you fled our union ceremony. For a human lover. The disgust in his voice was palpable. How far the House of Talvis has fallen. Eric looked at Claret in shock. House of Talvis. The royal bloodline. Jarek supplied before she could answer. My betrothed is not merely a traitor, human. She is royalty, promised to me to seal our house's alliance. The foundation of our coming conquest. Claret stood, dignity evident despite her state of undress. A political marriage I never agreed to, with a warmonger I despise. Jarek smiled coldly. Your agreement was irrelevant. Your duty was clear. His gaze shifted to the data drive on the nightstand, as was your betrayal when you stole military plans and fled. He gestured, and one of the soldiers moved to retrieve the drive. Claret tensed beside Eric, clearly calculating their odds. 3 armed Zelthorians against an injured woman and an unarmed human, Jarek said, reading her thoughts. Even you aren't that foolish, Claret. But Eric had spent the silent moment assessing the room's possibilities. The bathroom steam had condensed on the ceiling, where ancient electrical wiring was exposed. A serious code violation, and their only chance. He met Claret's eyes briefly, a slight nod toward the ceiling. Her gaze flickered upward, then back to him with understanding. You're right, Jarek, she said, stepping forward. I surrender myself to your custody. The commander looked surprised, then triumphant. Finally, wisdom prevails. Cool. As Claret approached Jarek, Eric lunged for the light switch, flicking it rapidly. The corroded wiring, wet from steam, shorted spectacularly. Sparks showered down, momentarily blinding the Zelthorians whose eyes were more sensitive to light. In that instant of confusion, Claret struck. Her movements were fluid despite her injuries, a combat style Eric had never seen. She disarmed 1 soldier, then used his weapon against the second, firing a pulse that sent him crashing through the bathroom door. Eric tackled Jarek, using his greater weight to advantage. But the commander's alien strength was overwhelming. He threw Eric off, sending him crashing into the wall. Primitive, Jarek snarled, advancing on him. But the delay had given Claret time to retrieve both the data drive and her discarded weapon. She fired at Jarek, who dodged with inhuman speed. The energy pulse hit the wall instead, blasting a hole large enough to serve as their escape route. Eric, now! Claret shouted. They dashed through the opening into the night, racing toward the truck. Behind them, Jarek's enraged roar promised vengeance. The truck's engine roared to life just as the Zelthorians emerged from the motel. Energy pulses sizzled past them as Eric accelerated out of the parking lot, Claret firing back through the window. Royal bloodline? Eric managed as they fishtailed onto the main road. Complicated, Claret replied, still watching for pursuers. My mother is High Council. Jarek's father is military command. Our marriage would unite civilian government with military, creating a power block aimed at Earth conquest. And the data? She held up a drive. Complete invasion plans. Troop deployments. Weaknesses in Earth's defenses. Everything. They drove in tense silence for several minutes, taking random turns to throw off pursuit. Finally, Eric spoke again. We need somewhere to regroup. Somewhere with communications capabilities. Claret nodded grimly. I need to transmit this data to your authorities and to my mother's opposition faction. There are those among my people who oppose Jarek's war. Eric considered their options. I know a place. Old military buddy. Went off-grid years ago, but he has equipment, serious equipment. Can you trust him? More than I trust myself. Claret studied him, then nodded. Lead on, Eric. It seems my fate is in human hands now. The safe house was a converted bunker buried beneath an unassuming farmhouse, 3 hours' drive from the city. Eric's friend, a paranoid ex-intelligence officer named Marcus, had built it during the first Zalthorian diplomatic crisis. Marcus greeted them at gunpoint, his weathered face registering shock at Claret's appearance. You brought one of them here? He demanded. She's on our side, Eric explained quickly, and she has information that could save Earth from invasion. After a tense standoff, Marcus reluctantly allowed them inside. The bunker was impressive, cement walls lined with technology, both military and improvised, including an extensive communications array. An SA surplus, Marcus explained when he caught Claret examining it, capable of encrypted broadcasts to any receiving station on Earth. Or beyond, I suppose. While Marcus worked to establish secure channels, Eric tended to Claret's reopened wounds. The fight at the motel had torn several stitches. You're quite the warrior, he commented as he applied fresh bandages. Claret winced. Royal children are trained from birth. Combat strategy, diplomacy, everything needed to serve the Empire. Yet here you are, betraying that Empire. She met his gaze steadily. I'm not betraying my people. I'm trying to save them from Jarek's faction. This war would devastate both our worlds. Eric finished bandaging her leg. And what happens to you when this is over? You can't go home. Sadness flickered across her features. No, I'm a traitor to my house now. There is no return. Then stay, he said, surprising himself with the suggestion. Earth could use an ambassador. Who actually wants peace? Before she could respond, Marcus called from the communication station. We're ready. Bring the data. The next hours were a blur of activity. Claret connected the data drive to Marcus's system, explaining the encryption and helping to format the information for human analysis. They transmitted copies to multiple destinations, Earth's Defense Command, the United Nations, and trusted media outlets, as well as to Claret's allies within the Zalthorian government. It's done, Marcus announced finally. The data's in circulation. Too many copies for them to suppress now. Claret sagged with visible relief. Then it's over. Jarek's faction can't risk invasion now that Earth is prepared. Not quite over, Eric cautioned. Jarek himself is still coming for you. For us. As if summoned by his words, the bunker's perimeter alarms blared. Marcus checked the security feed. Multiple hostiles. Zalthorian energy signatures. They found us. Ow! Eric demanded. We ditched the tracker. Claret's expression hardened. Me. My genetic signature. Royal bloodlines have. Distinctive markers. Jarek must have brought specialized equipment. Marcus was already moving, activating defense systems. I've got automated turrets, but they won't hold for long against that tech. There's an escape tunnel behind the east wall panel. Take it. I'll buy you time. Marcus, Eric began. Don't argue, soldier. The older man cut him off. One of you needs to survive to verify this data is authentic. Go. Eric clasped his friend's shoulder, nodding once. Then he and Claret hurried to the escape tunnel as the first explosions rocked the bunker. The tunnel led to a concealed exit half a mile away, emerging in dense woods. They had barely reached the tree line when the ground shook with a massive explosion. The bunker, Eric said grimly. Marcus must have triggered the self-destruct. Claret touched his arm, a gesture of comfort that felt surprisingly natural. Your friend died honorably. They moved quickly through the woods, putting distance between themselves and the destroyed bunker. The night was growing old, dawn threatening on the horizon. Jarek will assume we died in the explosion, Claret reasoned as they paused to rest. It gives us a temporary advantage. But he'll confirm, and when he doesn't find bodies, Eric didn't need to finish the thought. They found an abandoned hunter's cabin as the sun broke over the trees. It was little more than a shack, but it offered shelter and a chance to recuperate. Inside, Claret examined her wounds while Eric secured the perimeter. When he returned, he found her staring at a faded photograph on the wall. A human family, smiling, ordinary. "This is what you're fighting for," she said softly. "Not just this," Eric replied, moving to stand beside her, "but the chance for something better. For both our worlds." She turned to face him, closer than he expected. "You still believe that's possible? Humans and Zalthorians?" "I have to." His hand rose almost of its own accord, fingers tracing the luminescent patterns on her cheek. "Otherwise, what are we doing here?" The kiss, when it came, was both alien and familiar, her skin warmer than a human's, her approach more direct. But the underlying need was universal. They separated, both slightly breathless. Claret studied him with wonder. "Interspecies attraction is considered a perversion among my people. Mine too, generally," Eric admitted with a half-smile. "But then, I've never been good at following rules." She laughed, a sound he'd never heard from her before. It transformed her features, making her seem suddenly younger, more vulnerable. "What happens now?" she asked, serious again. "Now we rest. Then we find a way to confirm the data transmission succeeded. And then—" He hesitated. "And then, I was hoping you might have some ideas about that part." Claret's expression softened. "Perhaps we create something new, something neither of our worlds has seen before." Their moment of peace was shattered by the distinctive whine of Zalthorian engines. A ship, larger than a grab cycle, but smaller than a transport vessel, circled overhead. "Scout craft," Claret identified grimly. "Jarek is thorough." They watched from the cabin window as the ship completed its scan and moved on. But the message was clear. The hunt continued. "We need to end this," Eric said, "or we'll spend our lives running." Claret nodded. "There's only one way. We have to confront Jarek directly." "That's suicide." "Not necessarily." Her eyes gleamed with strategy. "The data transmission has weakened him politically. His superiors will be questioning his judgment, his ability to contain the situation. He's vulnerable and desperate, which makes him dangerous. How do we find him?" She smiled thinly. "We don't. We'll let him find us, but on our terms." Their plan was audacious in its simplicity, using components salvaged from the cabin and Eric's mechanical skills. They modified Claret's recovered weapon to emit a signal that mimicked her royal genetic markers, but amplified 100-fold. "A beacon he can't ignore," Eric confirmed as they finished the modifications. "It'll lead him right to us." "To ground of our choosing," Claret added. She had selected an abandoned quarry several miles away, open enough for maneuverability, but with sufficient cover for tactical advantage. They set out at dusk, positioning themselves carefully in the quarry. The modified weapon, set to emit its irresistible signal, lay in an exposed position at the center. "He'll come personally," Claret predicted as they took cover. "His pride demands it, especially after the data transmission." "How many with him?" "A small team. 4, perhaps 5. He won't want witnesses to his revenge." Night fell completely. Stars emerged, cold and distant in the clear sky. In their hiding place, Eric found Claret's hand and squeezed it gently. "Whatever happens," he began. "No," she interrupted. "Nugolodbis. We will prevail." The ship appeared as a darker shape against the night sky, descending with precision into the quarry. Its landing lights illuminated the open ground, including the bait weapon with its pulsing signal. The ship's hatch opened. Jarek emerged first, his ornate armor replaced with combat gear. Behind him came 4 soldiers, each armed with energy weapons more substantial than Claret's. "Claret," Jarek's voice boomed across the quarry. "I know you're here. Your genetic signature is unmistakable." He approached the modified weapon cautiously. "Did you think this crude trap would fool me?" At Claret's nod, Eric triggered the first explosive, a small charge that brought down a cascade of rocks on the far side of the quarry. The soldiers whirled, weapons trained on the disturbance. In that moment of distraction, Claret struck. She emerged from cover, firing her backup weapon at the nearest soldier. The energy pulse caught him squarely, dropping him instantly. Eric targeted another with his borrowed pulse pistol, his military training returning in a rush of muscle memory. His shot caught the soldier in the shoulder, spinning him around but not disabling him completely. Jarek roared with rage, identifying their position. He fired a continuous barrage that forced them back into cover as rock fragments exploded around them. Split up, Claret directed. Divide their attention. They separated, using the quarry's uneven terrain for cover. Eric triggered another diversionary explosive, creating chaos that allowed him to flank one of the remaining soldiers. A desperate struggle ensued, the Zalthorian's strength against Eric's combat experience. A lucky strike to the alien's neural cluster, a weakness Claret had identified, dropped him unconscious. Across the quarry, Claret was engaged with the third soldier. Her movement was a deadly dance, compensating for her injuries with skill and precision. Eric watched in amazement as she disarmed the soldier with a series of strikes too fast for his human eyes to fully track. The soldier crumpled to the ground, unconscious or worse. Only Jarek remained, stalking through the quarry with predatory focus. His golden eyes gleamed in the darkness as he tracked Claret's movements. "You dishonor your bloodline," he called out, voice echoing against the stone walls. "Running with a human, betraying your own kind." "You're the betrayer," Claret responded, her voice seemingly coming from everywhere at once. "Your war would destroy both our worlds. My loyalty is to life, not your ambition." Eric circled behind a large boulder, attempting to flank Jarek. But the Zalthorian commander sensed his approach, whirling with inhuman speed to fire a pulse that grazed Eric's arm. Searing pain shot through him, momentarily paralyzing his left side. Jarek advanced, weapon trained on Eric's chest. "This is the creature you chose over me? Over your duty," he sneered. "Pathetic. Fragile. Look how easily it bleeds." "He has something you'll never understand," Claret said, emerging from shadow. "Compassion. Honor that isn't bound by obedience." Jarek laughed coldly. "Sentiment. The weakness that doomed him. And you." He shifted his weapon toward Claret, but Eric, fighting through the pain, launched himself at Jarek's legs. They crashed to the ground, the weapon discharging harmlessly into the night sky. Jarek's superior strength quickly gave him the advantage, rolling Eric beneath him and wrapping blue fingers around his throat. "I will crush your windpipe slowly," Jarek hissed, "and make her watch." Darkness began to creep into Eric's vision as Jarek's grip tightened. Through the encroaching blackness, he saw Claret leap onto Jarek's back, a jagged piece of metal, part of the destroyed weapon, in her hand. She drove it into the junction between his neck and shoulder, striking a vital point. Jarek roared, releasing Eric to throw Claret off, but the damage was done. Purplish blood flowed freely from the wound, his movements already slowing. "You cannot stop what's coming," Jarek gasped, staggering backward. "The invasion plans may be compromised, but our forces are already mobilizing. Earth will fall." "No," Claret said, rising to her feet. The data transmission included command overrides. "Your father's codes. The fleet has already been ordered to stand down by someone with higher authority than you." Shock and rage contorted Jarek's features. "Impossible. My father would never." "Your father didn't." "I did. Royal bloodline, remember? I have access privileges you never will." Claret approached him steadily. "It's over, Jarek. Your war is canceled." With a final roar of defiance, Jarek lunged at her, but his strength was fading. Claret sidestepped easily, using his momentum to send him crashing to the ground. This time, he didn't rise. Eric pushed himself up, breathing in ragged gasps as circulation returned to his throat. "Is he?" "No," Claret said, checking Jarek's pulse. "But he'll require medical attention soon. His own people can decide his fate." She looked up at the sky, which should be arriving shortly. As if on cue, the distant sound of engines cut through the night. Larger than the scout craft, more official in configuration. "Peacekeepers," Claret explained, helping Eric to his feet. "The political opposition I mentioned. They'll have tracked the transmissions." She looked at Jarek's unconscious form. "They'll want him as evidence of the conspiracy." "And you?" Eric asked. "What'll they want with you?" Sadness crossed her features. "Testimony, at minimum. I've still betrayed state secrets, regardless of the cause." The Peacekeeper's vessel descended, throwing harsh light across the quarry. Armed Zalthorians emerged, their uniforms distinct from Jarek's military gear. They secured the area with efficient precision, gathering the fallen soldiers and, finally, Jarek himself. Their leader approached Claret with formal deference. "Princess Talvis, the council requests your presence for debriefing." Claret nodded. "I understand my duty, Commander." She turned to Eric. "This human requires medical attention. He is under my protection." The commander assessed Eric briefly, then inclined his head. "As you wish, Your Highness." As they were escorted to the vessel, Eric leaned close to Claret. "Princess." She shrugged, a remarkably human gesture. "A complication I didn't mention. Any other royal titles I should know about?" A smile tugged at her lips. "Just Claret will do." The next days passed in a flurry of debriefings, medical treatments, and diplomatic negotiations. Earth's governments, initially panicked by the invasion plans, gradually shifted to cautious dialogue as Claret's faction gained political control on the Zalthorian homeworld. Eric found himself unexpectedly central to these events, the human who had aided a Zalthorian princess, helping prevent interplanetary war. Officials questioned him extensively about his interactions with Claret, his motivations, his observations of Zalthorian technology and capabilities. Throughout all, he caught only glimpses of Claret. She was constantly surrounded by officials from both worlds, her role as reluctant diplomat consuming her time. When their eyes met across crowded briefing rooms, something unspoken passed between them, a connection that transcended the chaos around them. Finally, a week after the quarry confrontation, he found her alone in a quiet corridor of the Earth delegation headquarters. She wore formal attire now, an elegant synthesis of Zalthorian design and human influence that emphasized her alien beauty. "Princess," he greeted her with mock formality. "Mechanic," she returned, a smile warming her features. "You look well. Your injuries are healing. Zalthorian medicine works wonders, apparently." He gestured to his arm, now fully functional despite Jarek's energy weapon. "Thanks for arranging that. A small repayment for saving my life." Several times, as I recall, an awkward silence fell between them, heavy with unasked questions. "I hear you're leaving," Eric finally said. "Back to your world to help rebuild the government." Claret nodded. "My mother's coalition needs support. We have a chance to reshape our relationship with Earth, establish genuine peace instead of the Cold War Jarek wanted." She hesitated. "It's my duty." "Understand," Eric said, though a hollowness spread in his chest. "You were never meant to stay in a run-down garage with a human mechanic." "That's not." She stopped, frustration evident in her expression. "Politics is complicated, Eric. My presence there matters. But it doesn't mean..." "Doesn't mean what?" Instead of answering, she glanced around to ensure they were truly alone, then stepped closer. "Do you remember what I said in that hunter's cabin? About creating something new?" Eric nodded, his pulse quickening at her proximity. "I meant it." Her hand rose to his face, fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "But it requires patience, diplomatic groundwork, changing perceptions on both our worlds." Hope kindled in Eric's chest. "How long?" 6 months. Perhaps a year." She smiled. "Time for you to rebuild that garage properly. Make room for certain modifications." "Alien modifications?" "Royal alien modifications," she corrected with a glint in her eye. Eric took her hand in his. "I'll wait. The garage will be ready." A noise from the corridor and signaled approaching officials. Claret stepped back, resuming her diplomatic composure. "I should go. Final briefings before departure." Eric nodded, releasing her hand reluctantly. "Safe travels, Princess." She turned to leave, then paused, glancing back over her shoulder with a mischievous smile. "Oh, and Eric," her voice dropped to a whisper, "don't move. Let me arch my back first." The phrase, once a tactical seduction, now carried the weight of promise. Eric watched her walk away, already calculating the improvements his garage would need for a royal resident. 6 months later, Eric stood in the transformed space that had once been his hiding place. The garage remained, but adjoining it now was a proper living area, comfortable, clean, with modifications for Zalthorian physiology and technology. The work had kept him busy through the long wait, through the gradual thawing of relations between their worlds. He followed the diplomatic developments closely. Jarek's faction had been dismantled, the commander himself imprisoned for crimes against both species. Claret appeared occasionally in news broadcasts, regal, composed, advocating for cooperative research and cultural exchange rather than conquest. She never mentioned him publicly. It was safer that way. But occasionally, in her addresses, she would use phrases only he would recognize, small, private messages embedded in diplomatic language. The day she was scheduled to return, Eric paced nervously. No official welcome this time. Her arrival was classified, protected from both human and Zalthorian extremists who opposed the growing alliance. A subtle disturbance in the air was his only warning before a sleek craft descended silently into the rear courtyard he had prepared. Unlike the military vessels he'd encountered before, this one was elegant, designed for stealth and comfort rather than combat. The hatch opened, and Claret emerged. Simpler attire now, practical, though still carrying the unmistakable mark of her status. Her eyes found his immediately, and the diplomatic mask fell away. No words at first, only connection as she crossed the distance between them. When they finally embraced, it felt like completing a circuit, energy flowing between different but compatible systems. "The garage looks acceptable," she murmured against his shoulder, humor in her voice. "High praise from royalty," he returned, drawing back to see her face. "How long can you stay?" "Officially? 2 weeks. A cultural immersion study." Her smile deepened. "Unofficially? Longer. Much longer. I've arranged rotating duties. 3 months here, 1 month there." "Your mother approved this arrangement?" Claret laughed. "My mother suggested it. She's more practical than you might imagine. A permanent ambassador to Earth with genuine connections to humans? Politically invaluable. Is that all I am? A political asset?" Eric asked, feigning hurt. Claret's expression softened. She traced the line of his collarbone, her touch sending warmth through him. "You are many things, Eric. An asset, a confidant." Her voice lowered. "A partner." She stepped back, surveying the renovated space with appreciation. "You've built us a beginning. I had time on my hands. And hope." Something vulnerable flickered in her alien eyes. "Was it worth the wait?" In answer, Eric pulled her close again. This time, their kiss held no hesitation, no barrier of species or duty, only the connection they had forged through danger and trust. Later, as night settled over their strange new home, Claret lay beside him, the bioluminescent patterns on her skin casting gentle light in the darkness. She traced the scar on his arm where Jarek's weapon had struck. "We will have challenges," she said quietly. "Both our worlds still harbor those who fear difference." "We've faced worse," Eric reminded her. "Homicidal commanders, exploding bunkers, energy weapons." She laughed softly. "True, perhaps prejudice is manageable by comparison. Besides," he added, "we're building something important. A bridge between worlds. Is that how you see us? A diplomatic mission?" Eric smiled, drawing her closer. "I see us as proof. That connection matters more than division. That different doesn't mean incompatible." His fingers followed the luminescent patterns along her shoulder, and that sometimes the most unexpected paths led exactly where. "We need to go." Claret's expression turned playful. She shifted position, moving above him with deliberate grace. Speaking of paths, her back arched in a now familiar gesture that had once been performance and was now intimate ritual. "Don't move. Let me arch my back first." In the soft glow of her bioluminescence, past and future converged. The garage that had once been Eric's hiding place was now their sanctuary. A space between worlds where something new could flourish. Outside, Earth continued its cautious dance with Zalthar. Treaties were signed, technologies exchanged, suspicions slowly dismantled. And in a converted garage on the outskirts, an unlikely pair embodied the possibility of more than peace, of genuine connection across the stars. It wasn't the life either had imagined. It was something better, something new, something uniquely theirs.